This program is a simulated exercise.
We're in the better to ask forgiveness than permission. You no longer have time to be arguing the legal argument about authorities. You need to act.
I think the general consensus has been to be quite aggressive and active here. Part of my question relates to Stuart's suggestion about the ISPs and the telecoms is, what are you going to tell the private sector when you say to them, do all these things, help us in all these ways, and they say, well, Madam Attorney General, that's great, but we're going to be in litigation in the courts for the next 5 years. Who's going to pay our legal fees? Who's going to defend us? What's the answer you're going to be able to give?
Well, this is one of the critical questions that we've been discussing all morning. The structure of our laws today is that unless you can show that the action that you're taking is properly ordered by the government, you are leaving yourself open to lawsuit. And in the current structure of our laws with regard to communications companies, I would have to certify that what they are being asked to do is lawful. Otherwise, they are open to lawsuit. You asked what to do in the short term. We have to, as Joe said, deal with panic in the streets, which is, I understand, we have right now. So we have to get the guard out there, and it knows how to do that, consistent with and in cooperation with local law enforcement. But two, we have to deal with we have to make sure that what we are doing in terms of both the private sector and privacy interests is reasonable, temporary, necessary, and not overreaching. So I wouldn't reflexively go as far as you can go because we're in a state of panic. I would try to make sure that we communicate with the American people and with the private sector that what we are doing are steps we are taking are steps that we feel are absolutely necessary. Just to take the example on the table today, it is less efficient if you say to anyone who wants to offer apps, you have to make sure that each of them is safe. It's more efficient to just put them out there. But we are going to have to say to the private sector, I'm sorry, you're going to have to delay bringing this hot new application to market until you can assure that it is safe. So both prongs, the relationship with the private sector and the relationship with our privacy interests, have to be discussed forthrightly by the President.
All right, let me turn now to the issue of the fact that we have a reasonable perception that we are under attack. Turning first to the Defense Department, looking at this thing, the entirety of what we're facing, explosions, attacks on the power grid, attacks on communications. What do we do from a defense standpoint?
One of the things I would recommend, because of an opportunity and necessity, is the President should call for Congress to approve Cyber Command stand-up immediately. And then we should make sure Cyber Command understands they have the lead for helping us develop policy, rules of engagement, for that matter. As was pointed out, we're in a different world than we used to be. It's the threats to our nation are different than we had planned for years and years.
All right, the last thing I'm going to have to talk to the President about is what does he say to the public in a little while when he gets out there? And Joe, you've heard all the discussion. I'd like your views, and then if anybody else wants to weigh in, and then I'll give you my kind of final sum up of what I think I'll take in to the Oval Office. Joe?
I think the President has to be clear that this is a national emergency, crisis, whatever the right word is, that we don't have the answers. But the full weight of this United States government is behind getting the answers, both who did this and how we're going to restore the power, the phone service, normalcy to Americans' lives. And I think he needs to frame this as a dynamic situation. He can cite the 9/11 attacks as a time when the country put counterterrorism first and foremost. Well, now cyber terrorism has taken that place, and we need to respond with the same sense of purpose and vigor, going not just for the next few days, not just until you get your phone back or the lights go back on, but making sure that we're doing everything we can to resolve their problem. And I think if he can speak broadly and thematically there, that will be the first and an important step to restoring confidence.
Well, listen, I appreciate everybody's advice. I'm going to sum up kind of my takeaway on this before I go into the Oval Office. The first is, I think, to me, I have a clear takeaway. This is a dynamic problem. This is not a one-shot deal. We're going to fix the problem, we'll win the war, and then we'll go about peace. We're going to live with this for as many years as we can foresee. Second thing is, I detect a frustration on the part of everybody with the binary system in which we tend to address these problems. You know, the domestic, traditional law enforcement on the one hand, the international overseas war fighting on the other. The fact is, this is going to take us in and out of our borders. The servers may be in Russia, the actual originator may be in Sudan, or may be next door here somewhere in suburban Virginia. So we're going to have to find a way to assemble all the tools in the toolkit. And then I think the last observation I'd make is there seemed to be a surprising amount of uniformity in taking very aggressive, vigorous action. But I think also a sense that it would be important very quickly thereafter to get the public to buy into it, so that the president might go out and assert quite aggressively not only statutory but even non-statutory authorities, but that you'd expect to bring Congress down, have them stand there in the first couple of days and support what was done, and then ultimately ratify it in the way that Congress did with what Lincoln did during the Civil War. Of course, that means Congress has to be grown up and be willing to do that as well. And then ultimately we got to get the public. The public has to buy in and understand with clarity what it is the president is doing and why the president's doing it. So with that, before I terminate this meeting in the NSC, any other further comments anybody wants to pass on? Well, thank you for your dedication, and the wealth and the wisdom of your experience has been very manifest, and I'm pleased to have been a colleague of yours. Thanks very much.
When we come back, a discussion with the War Room participants. Are we ready?
Do you see any evidence, Joe Lockhart, that the Obama administration is on top of this issue? And answer the question honestly.